Some moments linger endlessly, clinging like shadows, quiet yet ever present. 2 years have passed since that fateful day. 2 years since everything transformed. What was meant to be straightforward turned into a beach outing with my son Ethan. My husband Michael was unable to attend, as he never was. My priorities were always clear, and solitude had become my familiar companion. Yet on that day, everything felt off, both in the moment and in retrospect. We laid the towels out, basking in the warmth of the sun, perhaps a bit too intense. I reclined, at last liberated from the clamor of the world. I requested Ethan's assistance in applying some oil to my back. I didn't hesitate at all. He's my son, my boy. Why would I? Initially, it was merely a gesture, just his hands simply offering assistance. But then I sensed it. I sensed his presence linger, descending further, and I didn't halt him. Why didn't I intervene? You believe you understand yourself. You believe you understand your family. Yet there exists that singular moment, a moment that can dismantle it all. That day, on this beach, a transformation occurred within me, and I've never returned to who I once was. Michael and I had shared over 16 years of marriage. Those who were familiar with us would undoubtedly describe us as the ideal pair. A lovely home, wonderful children, and a stable existence. Yet, the fractures remain hidden until you find yourself within the confines. One cannot truly grasp the void unless they are the one experiencing it. For years, Michael's career consumed his entire existence. He was perpetually immersed in his work, burning the midnight oil, dedicating weekends, and even sacrificing holidays. I once convinced myself that his actions were for our benefit. The extra hours, the unwavering commitment, were all for the future he envisioned for our family. Yet, after a considerable time, that narrative begins to unravel. What value does a home hold if it remains unoccupied? I faded into the background for him. Upon his arrival, he hardly acknowledged my presence. He ceased inquiring about my feelings, desires, and needs. Our conversation consisted of brief exchanges, primarily focused on expenses, shopping, and the children. He cherished Ethan and his little sister, Sophie. Yet even in their company, he felt like a mere specter. He was present, yet somehow absent. I often found myself at the table opposite him, pondering whether he noticed my presence anymore. That morning, I recall being in the kitchen while Michael rushed out the door. He took hold of his briefcase, pressed a gentle kiss to the crown of Sophie's head, and cast a fleeting glance in my direction. Apologies, Emily, but I won't be able to join today. An unexpected situation arose at work. I chose not to engage in any debate. I simply nodded as I always did, my throat constricted. I reassured myself that everything was okay. Ethan and I could embark on our own journey. At 17, Ethan stood tall and lanky, his brown eyes mirroring his father's, yet his face held a gentler quality. He remained quiet, even when I mentioned it would only be the two of us. It seems he had become accustomed to his father always coming to the rescue. He merely shrugged, took hold of the bags, and trailed behind me to the car. He sat in the passenger seat during the drive, earbuds in place, gazing out the window in that familiar way teenagers often do. A smile crept onto my face. He was maturing at an astonishing pace, and at times I found myself pondering if a mere blink would mean losing him as well. The journey to the beach seemed to stretch on forever. My thoughts drifted, as they inevitably did, to Michael. I reminisced about all the moments we shared, cozy movie nights, leisurely strolls, and spontaneous adventures just for the thrill of it. I reflected on the manner in which he would caress me, how his gaze would brighten at the sight of me. It had been ages since I experienced that. I felt nothing at all. I felt utterly exhausted from fading into the background. At last, we reached our destination, and Ethan graciously assisted me in transporting the bags to a serene location by the water's edge. I arranged the towels as he prepared the umbrella. For some reason, I found myself compelled to reach out to him. Perhaps it was due to the fact that he was the sole presence in that space. Perhaps I simply longed for someone to listen to me. "Isn't it lovely to step outside and enjoy the world around us?" I remarked, attempting to convey a sense of cheerfulness. He simply nodded, brushing his hair back with his hand. "Indeed, Mom, it's quite lovely." I reclined on the towel, absorbing the warmth of the sun as it enveloped my skin. I remained still for a time. I allowed myself to unwind, as if I were attempting to release the burdens of the past few years, even if only for a fleeting hour. However, a thought crossed my mind about the oil. I straightened my posture and faced Ethan. "Could you assist me in applying this to my back?" I inquired. "It's beyond my grasp." He glanced at me for a moment, a hint of uncertainty in his eyes, before finally accepting the bottle from my grasp. I reclined once more, my face pressed into the towel, and I waited. The initial contact was soft, deliberate. His hands trembled as if he feared causing me pain. A smile crept across my face, evoking memories of his childhood. When he would take my hand to guide me across the street, those hands were so tiny in those days. I suggested he apply a bit more pressure. "My voice is muted. It's all right." He paid attention, and his hands became more assured as he glided the oil over my shoulders and along my back. I shut my eyes and concentrated on the warmth, the cadence of his caress. For a brief instant, I allowed myself to savor it. It had been an eternity since anyone had laid a hand on me, and that realization struck me more profoundly than I cared to acknowledge. But then I sensed his hands glide lower, gently, deliberately, tracing the curve of my back. My breath hitched, and I parted my lips to speak, yet silence enveloped me. Thoughts swirled within me, yet I remained quiet. I reassured myself that everything was okay, that he was merely being helpful, that my thoughts were all in my head, but deep down, I knew the truth. His hands lingered for a moment, just above the boundary where my towel ceased to cover. I sensed his uncertainty, mirrored by my own. And rather than halting him, I spoke the words. "It's all right. You can also apply some pressure there." The words lingered ominously, and as soon as they escaped my lips, I realized there was no way to retract them. Ethan remained silent. He continued on without pause. I shut my eyes tightly, sensing his hands on me, positioned lower than they ought to have been. My heart raced with such intensity that I feared he could hear it. I felt the urge to shift, to rise, to urge him to cease, yet I remained still. I was unable to. I allowed it to unfold. To this day, the reason remains a mystery to me. Perhaps it was the solitude. Perhaps I was overly eager to experience a sense of belonging, even if it wasn't right. Or perhaps I simply lost interest altogether. That day on the beach, a profound shift occurred within me, altering the course of my existence forever. Thank you for journeying with me through this tale. I understand this may be difficult to absorb, and I'm grateful for your willingness to listen. If you're enjoying this video, or know someone who might connect with what I'm discussing, I'd appreciate it if you could take a moment to like and subscribe. It truly encourages me to continue sharing narratives like this and reassures me that I'm not isolated in this experience. Okay, let's dive back in. Following that day, at the beach, a change occurred. The feelings I experienced, the sights that unfolded before me, and the way Ethan gazed at me afterward were impossible to overlook. It was more than a fleeting glance or a brief encounter. It was unrelenting. Each time our eyes met, I sensed a change within him, an unnameable quality that lingered in my mind, impossible to ignore. I attempted to conceal it. Upon returning home that evening, I made every effort to maintain a facade of normalcy. I prepared dinner. I inquired with Ethan regarding school. Late into the night, I folded laundry, my hands trembling throughout the task. I found myself revisiting every moment that unfolded. The way his hands moved, the lingering moments, the palpable tension coursing through my own body. I despised myself for it, and I loathed him for causing me to feel this way about my own son. Michael remained completely unaware. He returned home late, as was his custom, his tie askew, his expression weary. He pressed his lips to my cheek, a mere echo of what it once was. It was a long day, and I inquired, yearning for a bit of dialogue. He let out a low grunt and gave a nod, making his way toward the living room with purpose. It has always been this way. His presence seemed to linger in the background, almost as if it were an afterthought. Once more, I sensed a profound invisibility enveloping me. That evening, I reclined in bed, gazing at the ceiling as Michael nibbled gently beside me. The house lay in stillness, yet my thoughts raced on. I found myself lost in thoughts of Ethan, his hands, and the intensity of his gaze lingering in my mind. I was aware that it was not correct. I realized I needed to put an end to it, whatever it might be, before it escalated any further. Yet, there existed another facet of my being, a shadowy, solitary essence that yearned to cling to it, that hungered for the gaze, the caress, the sensation of recognition. As the days went by, Ethan remained silent. Yet his silence resonated more profoundly than any spoken phrase. He didn't really steer clear of me, not in a direct way. Rather, it felt as though he remained nearer. He would often be caught observing me as I prepared meals, tidied up, or sat quietly on the couch during the late hours. And I allowed it to unfold. I allowed him to continue. I didn't hold back. Then arrived the following weekend. The heat returned, wrapping the house in a suffocating embrace. Michael had vanished, caught up in some final scheme, leaving Ethan and me in solitude once more, just as it had been in the past. I inquired whether he would like to return to the beach, just the two of us. I'm uncertain about my reasons for taking that action. Perhaps I believed that stepping into the open air would bring clarity to my thoughts. Perhaps I sought to challenge myself, to determine if I could set everything aside. The journey was serene on this occasion. Ethan chose not to wear his earbuds, however. He remained seated, gazing out the window, his knee twitching with impatience. I felt the urge to speak, to utter a word, any word, to shatter the stillness that enveloped us. Yet whenever I tried to speak, the words felt trapped within me. Upon our arrival at the beach, we found it nearly deserted. The vividness of the water's blue hue lingers in my memory, as does the gentle caress of the wind against my skin. I laid the towels out once more, just as I had done previously, while Ethan assisted me in arranging everything. This time, I didn't request him to apply oil on my back. I was unable to. Instead, I remained there with my eyes shut, feigning that all was well. Even with my eyes closed, his gaze was palpable. I sensed his gaze upon me. The true turning point arrived later that afternoon. We chose to wash off at the beach showers before making our way home. It was meant to be a brief moment, merely to wash away the grains clinging to our skin. Yet, an event unfolded at that moment that remains beyond my comprehension. Upon arriving at the showers, Ethan was the first to step beneath the cascading water, allowing it to flow down his back. I lingered at the periphery, observing him for a brief moment before I decided to join in as well. A sudden impulse took hold of me, and I removed my outer layers, standing next to him as the cool water brushed against my skin. Ethan gazed at me, taken aback. Whether it was astonishment, bewilderment, or an entirely different emotion, he remained silent. I turned my gaze towards him, truly observing him, and remarked, "You ought to remove your shorts as well. It is essential to rinse thoroughly." I can't quite understand why I expressed that. Perhaps I sought to demonstrate to myself that I could take charge, that I could bring this to a halt. Or maybe I was challenging him, challenging myself. He paused for a moment, then complied with my request, pulling his shorts down. In that moment, we found ourselves intertwined, isolated from the world, as the rain cascaded around us, cleansing all but the emotions we shared. I averted my gaze and gently requested, "Assist me with my back," and he obliged. His hands moved with the same carefulness as before, yet the tension was unmistakable. I sensed it within him. I sensed it within myself. As his hand brushed against my waist, time seemed to stand still. The atmosphere grew dense, the rush of the water overpowering all other sounds. I had the option to turn back. I had the power to put an end to it. Instead, I reclined, drawing nearer to him. I took his hands and led them to my chest, and in that moment, he stayed right where he was. The events that followed are beyond my ability to articulate. I shall refrain from providing an explanation. It was a fleeting instant, a haze of longing, solitude, and an unnamed sensation that lingers in the shadows. It lacked softness, and it moved with urgency. It was fervent, intense, flawed in every aspect, yet I was powerless to prevent it. I had no desire to. As it came to an end, we remained rooted in place, the rain cascading around us, erasing the signs, yet leaving the reality untouched. He embraced me then, embraced me in a way that no one else had in years, and I surrendered to it. In the aftermath, silence enveloped us. We toweled off, gathered our things, and made our way back to the car without a word. I observed Ethan subtly, noting the flush on his face and the rigidity of his movements. I realized I had destroyed it all. I realized we had ventured into territory that was irrevocable. And yet, for the first time in ages, a sense of vitality surged within me. The journey back was initially quiet. The vehicle seemed cramped, burdened, as if the very atmosphere was weighing us down. I clutched the steering wheel with intensity, striving to concentrate on the road ahead, yet my thoughts were a whirlwind. I could still sense him, Ethan, his hands, his body, the heaviness of all that had just transpired between us. I couldn't help but sneak peeks at him in the passenger seat. He sat rigidly, gazing out the window, his complexion heated, his jaw clenched. Suddenly, he broke the silence with his words. "Mom," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, tinged with uncertainty. I averted my gaze from him. I was unable to. Yet, I listened to him. "Excuse me? What just transpired back there?" My heart raced with excitement. For a brief instant, I considered feigning ignorance, dismissing it casually, shifting the conversation elsewhere. Yet the facade had lost its meaning, especially after everything we had experienced. I inhaled unsteadily and replied, "I don't know." It was the reality, or perhaps the nearest semblance of it. I was completely in the dark about what had transpired or the reasons behind it. All I understood was that everything had transformed. Silence enveloped us until we finally arrived at the driveway. I switched off the engine, yet neither of us made a move. Ethan finally focused his gaze on me, truly seeing me. For the first time, I noticed a fearsome glint in his eyes. It was neither confusion nor guilt, nor even shame. It was a deep yearning. "For how long have you been experiencing these feelings?" he inquired. His words sent a shiver down my spine, as I had been pondering the very same question. In that moment, I gazed at him, and it felt as though a floodgate had burst open within me. "I'm not sure," I murmured. Perhaps, perhaps for a duration that I'm reluctant to acknowledge." Silence enveloped us as we remained still in the shadows. I believed that would be the end of it, that we would step inside, attempt to erase everything, and act as if nothing had transpired. However, Ethan envisioned something different. Just as I was about to turn the handle, he leaned in and pressed his lips against mine. It began gently, with a certain timidity, as if he feared I might withdraw. However, I did not. I allowed him to kiss me, and I reciprocated the gesture. And then I surrendered to chaos. I'm not sure if it was the solitude, the years of being overlooked, or the way Ethan gazed at me as if I were someone special after such a long time. Yet, I allowed it to unfold. Right there, outside our house, Ethan drew me close, his hands gliding over me as if they were meant to be there. I experienced a profound sense of vitality. I experienced a sense of being desired. I felt acknowledged. After so long, I found myself unbothered by anything else. I'm not sure how much time passed while we were intertwined, but eventually, we made our way indoors. The details of the walk to the door escape me, yet the sensation of his hand in mine lingers. The silence enveloping us crackling with an electric energy. There was silence between us. There was no necessity for that. As soon as we crossed the threshold, the situation intensified dramatically. It felt as though we had been restraining ourselves for an eternity, and at last, the floodgates had opened. The following days passed in a haze. Ethan lingered near me, constantly seeking opportunities to make contact or catch my gaze when no one else was around. I would urge myself to halt, to distance myself, to conclude whatever this might be. Yet each time my gaze met his, I recognized the same solitude that resided within me. We were like two mirrors, each reflecting the same longing, the same void within us. I found myself unable to refuse. I had no desire to. In the stillness of the night, I would find myself lying in bed beside Michael, gazing up at the ceiling, attuned to the rhythm of his breath. I found myself contemplating Ethan in the adjacent room, recalling the sensation of his hands and the way he reignited a spark within me. And then I would shut my eyes, a sense of guilt coiling in my chest like a serpent. I realized it was only a matter of time before it ended. I was aware it was not right. Yet I found myself unable to halt. The strain between us intensified with each passing day until it ultimately erupted. The hour was late, and the evening had settled in. Michael found themselves immersed in their craft once more. Sophie lay in peaceful slumber while Ethan and I occupied the kitchen. As I scrubbed the dishes, I focused on the rhythmic motion, attempting to distract myself from the chaos swirling in my thoughts. As I sensed his presence behind me, I pivoted to face him, and there he stood, gazing at me just as he had on the beach. "Ethan," I murmured gently, attempting to caution him, yet he continued unabated. He moved in, his presence so near that I could sense the warmth of his breath against my neck. "Mother," he murmured, "you occupy my thoughts endlessly." I stood still. My heart raced with such intensity that I feared it might explode. I felt the urge to tell him to halt, to retreat to his space, to give me some peace. However, I did not. Instead, I gazed up at him and uttered the one thing I ought to have kept to myself. I find myself unable to stop as well. And that was the moment when everything unraveled. Ethan pressed his lips against mine once more, with greater intensity, filled with urgency, and I returned the kiss. I was indifferent to the fact that it was incorrect. I felt indifferent towards Michael, Sophie, and the life we had created together. He was my sole focus. Ethan, my dear boy. The sole individual who made me feel significant. Ever since that day on the beach, everything has felt different. Honestly, I have my doubts that they ever will. Ethan and I have ventured into territory that cannot be undone, no matter how fervently I attempt to persuade myself of the contrary. A fleeting moment has evolved into something beyond my grasp. The weight of guilt lingers, persistent and unyielding, yet it fails to deter me. That's the aspect that fills me with the greatest fear. Each day, I gaze at my husband, Michael, and my daughter, Sophie, and I can't help but ponder how they remain unaware of it, how they remain oblivious to the fractures that are widening within our family. Perhaps they are so engrossed in their own experiences that they fail to notice my gradual decline. Or perhaps I've simply become more skilled at concealing it. Yet beneath the surface, I understand that this moment is fleeting. Hidden truths have a tendency to reveal themselves. And when that moment arrives, the consequences will obliterate everything. I have made attempts to cease. I keep reminding myself that this is not right. Ethan truly deserves more. I am worthy of more. Yet with each touch, each gaze that makes me feel singularly cherished, I find myself unraveling. He ignites a spark within me that I haven't experienced in years, perhaps never before. And that's the reality I must embrace. This situation seems challenging to resolve. I'm uncertain about my ability to resolve this. That's the reason I'm opening up about my experience with you. Perhaps there is someone who holds the key, an insight I have yet to consider. Perhaps you could assist me in finding a solution to this predicament I've created before it becomes irreversible. I would greatly appreciate any advice you might have. If you've experienced something similar, or know someone who has, I would love to hear your insights. Let this serve as a cautionary note. Isolation can lead you to destinations you never imagined you'd reach. Don't allow yourself to wander off course as I once did. Don't allow your reality to crumble before you grasp the situation at hand. Once that line is crossed, there's no turning back. I appreciate your attention. I would appreciate your insights. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe for additional content. I seek reassurance that I am not solitary in this experience. Occasionally, the most profound betrayals are not those we inflict upon others, but rather those we impose upon our own selves. Residence.